Right. So we are halfway through Braxton Hunter's list of 10 questions for atheists. This is part 3, where I'll be addressing question number 5. We've already done 2 parts before this, addressing 1 through 4. There will be 2 parts after, addressing 6 through 10. So, let's just do it. Yep. Yeah. Talk to me, Braxton.
Now, I know we've all got our talking points, but I want you to struggle to be as sincere with yourself as you can right now. Doesn't it bother you a little bit that when we come to talk about the origins of the universe, and if there's a multiverse, the origin of that too, that the only real options you've got besides God is a past infinite universe, which is impossible, or the universe coming to exist uncaused out of nothing, or something far less clear than even those? It seems that for any worldview that includes atheism, there's a massive blind spot when it comes to the origin of the universe. And all the attempts to try and circumvent that problem seem desperate and at least far less likely than theism. My question isn't just what do you typically say about this, because I'm well aware of the responses.
Oh yeah.
My question is simply this: when you step away from the debate mode that it's so easy for us all to get into online, doesn't this issue destabilize you a little bit? It seems to fit really poorly with any worldview that includes atheism.
It will be very difficult to answer this question, honestly and completely, without sounding like you're in debate mode. Because this topic has been the subject of debate between atheists and Christians for a long, long time. Just about anybody who's going to be interested in this question and its answer has likely seen part of some of them, and will therefore recall such intellectual greats as Sean Carroll and William Lane Craig speaking on this very thing, parrying and thrusting in argument and counter-argument, point and counterpoint, as they crossed verbal swords. I think many atheists, besides me, viewed your introduction here as a bit of a shot to the jaw, Braxton. And I think that probably my response to you and the reasons beyond that response will sound much the same to your viewers. But before we even get to that, I gotta yell at you a little bit. I cannot fathom why you insisted on using the uncaused out of nothing line in regards to an atheistic view on the origins of the universe. You did write this out on a computer, yeah? Was the backspace key non-functional? Maybe you read an earlier draft that you had wrote while you were drunk or something. I have never heard an atheist support this position that you have presented. Have you? I mean, it certainly isn't my position. So what exactly are you on about, man? And past infinite, that's not really my position either, for the record. But being as you brought it up, you raise a couple of interesting points here. If the universe cannot be past infinite, then neither can the God proposition you want to put forth without descending into special pleading. If your God always was and was uncaused, therefore always could be, then the universe could be as well. If you're putting past infinite on the table for your God, it can also apply to the universe. If you take it off the table for the universe, then you take it off the table for your God. Right. Glad we cleared that up. But you wonder why atheists call apologists dishonest? There you go, dude. That right there. That little strawman-y stunt that you pulled as you were presenting this question for consideration. I would be shocked if I was the first atheist to point this out to you. I've seen the names of some of the people that have responded to you. I ain't seen their videos yet. I ain't read their responses or anything like that, and I won't until this series is done. But I can't imagine they all let that go. Now, that unfortunate but necessary correction out of the way, let me address another thing that you made during your presentation here. I am not trying to be in debate mode. I'm really not. I've never been in a debate. That's your gig. You have the education. You have the experience in that field. I simply lack it. I don't have it. I am merely giving you my answers to your question. Nothing more. And you did ask what I say on this issue, even if you are well aware of the answers. I don't know how to take that just now. I can't really give you a charitable reading of the question, so I'm going to include it here. I dig that your main thrust was about the destabilization that you could supposedly present by offering the God concept in here, but if I don't address what I say about the origins, I'm going to have to assume that you would call me being evasive. I can't give you charity when reading into your questions anymore. You've demonstrated that. It's kind of disappointing, because it makes it more difficult for me. Now I have to put it all out there. So, that said, regarding the origins of the universe, I don't see how a Christian apologist could possibly even challenge them, much less destabilize them, as Christian theism, being based on supernatural literature, has no meaningful account for the origins of the universe. When it pretends to have one, it looks rather foolish because it appeals to supernature, which, as I had said earlier in this series, is something that we cannot detect or measure or interact with. Lacking these, it's inadmissible until such time as it becomes detectable, measurable, or a method of interaction is shown to reliably yield predictable results. Christian theism is too unstable to stand on its own and needs apologists, like you, to shore it up to a stiff wind of questions from grade school science students. You think something that rickety is going to destabilize my worldview? You got another think coming. The fatal flaws in the Christian origin story places the poor Christian that got suckered into defending it between a quarry of rocks and a foundry of hard spots, where they need to violate either logic, natural law, their own theology, or, like so many apologists do in debate mode, ethics. And I'm glad we're avoiding that here. Most theologians in the modern era seem to have given into logic to a degree, and concede that their God cannot create the rock too heavy for him to lift, and thus confine him these days by stating he can do all that is possible and cannot do that which is impossible. In case somebody accidentally defines the God in question into paradox and thus non-existence. He cannot, for example, make a married bachelor, the squared circle, yada 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 yada. He enacts his divine will through natural law and logical means. Well, there you have it then. The Christian understanding of God did not create the universe, particularly as per the Christian narrative, where he spoke it into existence from nothing, as recorded in the opening chapters of Genesis. Because time wasn't yet a thing, creation requires that to complete. He could have only created anything, if that's even coherent, after time was existent. Thus, the universe had to be existent because the universe is, quite literally, space-time. So the Christian creator God is already lost. To speak something into existence, one needs physical matter like air and vocal cords to be pre-existing as well, which is paradoxical because that's included in what he's supposed to be creating in the first place, so that can't be it. Maybe that whole disembodied mind thing, maybe that helps you out. No, not really. Because thoughts of creation, if the word wasn't spoken, would still necessarily be a temporal event, so time would still have to be pre-existing, thus did not create the universe. Furthermore, natural law would need to be violated to support the Christian narrative, as he'd need to create that which cannot be created nor destroyed, and in so doing violate the first law of thermodynamics, which cannot be done. So what is that? 2, 3, 4 zip now? It's rhetorical. Doesn't matter. But quickly here, regarding the first law's suggestion of past infinity, which is where I think you got part of that strawman-y horseshit from, do keep in mind when I speak of the origins of the universe, I am talking back to the singularity, where time breaks down. Asking what happened before the Big Bang, before time, is like asking what's north of the North Pole. It's a meaningless question. Nothing I say here should be construed to pretend to even address a meaningless question, such as that. Sometimes the most Dishonest of Christian apologists try to circumvent this fact and ascribe meaning to the meaningless by offering this rather bizarre track wherein they claim that their God is outside of space and time. They'll even adopt William Lane Craig's vocal inflections when they do. Timeless, spaceless. Come on, you've heard this before, yeah? But I agree with them. If something is outside of space and time, then it is not inside of space and time, which means it does not exist in reality in any detectable way. That it never existed in reality in any detectable way. That it never will exist in reality in any detectable way. So anything the Christian apologist says about the properties, nature, the wants, the intentions, the motivations of such a God is a waste of everyone's time, as they don't have any way whatsoever to know what it is they're talking about either. To try and downplay this fact, the apologist in debate mode typically goes to Christian tradition trivia so they can keep play acting as if they're logically deducing anything, which is rather boring and diversionary to my mind as it gets one invested in minutiae far removed from the initial topic. In a debate, it often seems the apologist does this to run out the clock and avoid the point by pretending they have meaningful things to say and were cut off or limited on a technicality of presentation format when, in fact, they were using a whole bunch of words to say a whole bunch of nothing. I'm glad we're not doing that. That's kind of irritating. So I personally find no challenge to my worldview from the Christian apologists on this topic until such time as they abandon supernatural explanations and thus do not engage as Christian apologists. Or they overcome the inherent problems with supernatural explanations, which would be heretical to Christianity, which would make them not engage as Christian apologists. One or the other is going to have to happen to challenge my position in any way. And my position is this. I am quite comfortable in holding to natural law and observing the universe as it is. I accept the natural explanations we have, I celebrate the advances that we have made, and I admit that all is not known. Rewind that and play it again. I admit all is not known. I dismiss appeals to supernature as soon as they fall out of someone's face hole for reasons already given ad nauseam. If we discover more about the origins of the very early universe, fantastic. If we don't, okay. I don't claim to have knowledge beyond our best measurements and current understanding. Let me say that again, all right? Now listen to me. Really listen. I don't claim to have knowledge beyond our best measurements and understanding. It doesn't faze me none that there are, at current, 10 to the negative 43 seconds that we know nothing about with our current understanding and best measurements. I would say that 10 to the negative 43 seconds out of 13.8 billion years is some pretty fine resolution, personally. But how small is that whole to the negative 43 seconds thing? Well, you need to think of it on scales that most people are unaccustomed to using. I'm certainly not accustomed to using them. I'm no mathematician. I'm not a cosmologist. You're never going to see PhD after my name, I assure you. I only have a high school education, a couple college courses related to my field of work, but I'll try to put it in perspective for you, Braxton, as best I'm able. So, you remember this guy? He got a $3,000 fine from the Department of Motor Vehicles, which he thought was unjust. So he gets all pissed off and he goes to pay at the DMV, but he does so in loose pennies. Yeah, loose pennies. $3,000 of loose pennies. It took homeboy 5 wheelbarrows to hold it all. You remember hearing about that? I do. I giggled myself stupid when I heard about this the first time. I thought that was a fantastic way to troll the system. Like master level epic. Right? But that got me thinking, yeah? Like, what if we, the United States, what if we paid off our national debt in loose pennies? Right? It's like $27 trillion at this point, right? There's some economist on the radio. He's popping off at the mouth. I have no idea what he's talking about, right? But he's saying unless we do this and this and this, it's going to be 30 trillion by the X quarter of fiscal year, whatever. Like, all that is over my head. I don't have the head for that kind of stuff. But 30 trillion, man, that sounds bad. That sounds like really bad, right? So how many wheelbarrows would you need for $30 trillion, right? If you need 5 wheelbarrows for 3,000, right? And you just take the zeros and you move them out, right? So that's like $30,000 is 50 wheelbarrows, right? You move the zeros out, right? So $30 trillion is 50 billion wheelbarrows. 50 billion. So let's say you had enough people to push them all, because you don't, because there's only like 8 billion people on the frickin' planet. But let's say you did, yeah? So each wheelbarrow, you got somebody pushing it, right? And, you don't want them like all crammed on top of each other, because they, you'd run over the guy in front of you or get run over by the guy behind you. So you leave a little bit of space, right? Maybe place them 10 feet apart, right? You do that with 50 billion wheelbarrows, right? The line of wheelbarrows will wrap around the earth 4,000 times. The line of wheelbarrows will wrap around the earth 4,000 times, right? It would be 150 million kilometers, over 93 million miles long. That is the distance from Earth to the sun. And that's just giving them 10 feet to move. That's crazy. That's freaking crazy, right? Now think of that line of wheelbarrows from Earth to the sun, all right? It takes, if you were to shine the light from one end to the other, it'll take 8 minutes and 20 seconds to get there, right? Think of that line of wheelbarrows, that whole line of wheelbarrows is 1 second. Just 1 second. You need 60 of those lines to pay for a minute. And 60 of those to pay for an hour. 24 of those to pay for a day, 365 of those to pay for a year, and 13.8 billion of them to pay for the time between the Big Bang and now. And every second, they add in another line of wheelbarrows like that. Okay? Okay? Can you see that? There's like pennies freaking everywhere, right? So just pick one line of those wheelbarrows, 1 second at a time. Okay? Now, pick any random wheelbarrow. Any one of those 50 billion. It doesn't matter. They're all the same. They each got $600 in them. It's all the same. All right? Pick any wheelbarrow. Now take 1 penny. Take 1 penny out of any one of them wheelbarrows. Right? You got one there? So that penny from that line of wheelbarrows heading out to the sun. The other end is 8 1/3, light minutes away. 150 million kilometers away. Filled with these pennies. Just this one here. It's what, 3/4 of an inch across? Maybe a 1/16 of an inch thick. Right? So this penny is to the -16th of that second. The -16th be 1 penny. To get to the -43, you need to take this penny and scrape it against the wall. The amount of coin transferred to the wall, that's the kind of legal tender that we're talking about when we talk 10 to the -43 seconds. That's what we're talking about here. A scrape on a wall from a line full of wheelbarrows full of pennies heading from here to the frickin' sun. That scrape on the wall. That's what to the -43 second looks like. So, let me ask you this. If you was owed $30 trillion for 1 second of time, and the guy paying you scraped the penny against the wall as he paid up, would you not consider the debt satisfied? Would you feel shortchanged? If so, I'd say that you ain't worth doing business with.